Hey everyone, let's dive into something that is, for a lot of people, a really frustrating medical puzzle. You go through a huge surgery, a total knee replacement, and you're told everything went great. The x-rays look absolutely perfect, but your knee still hurts. We're gonna figure out why.
And this isn't some rare fringe issue. We're talking about a huge number of people. The data shows that for all the success of knee replacements, as many as 1 in 4 patients just aren't happy with the result. And what's the number one complaint? You guessed it, that nagging, persistent pain.
So that's it, right? That's the big question we're digging into today. If the brand new joint is in there perfectly, if everything looks good on paper, where on earth is that pain coming from? It's a real mystery, and we're going to investigate it together. Let's get into it.
Okay, so the official term for this is anterior knee pain, or AKP, and that really just means pain right at the front of your knee. The mystery here is that it happens in what doctors call a well-appearing knee replacement. In other words, the new joint looks totally fine, but the pain is still there.
And if you've been through this, you know exactly how maddening this can be. You're told the operation was a home run, but you still feel that ache when you're climbing stairs, or maybe when you get up after sitting for a while. It's a genuine puzzle that needs a much, much deeper look than just a quick x-ray.
All right, so just like in any good mystery, the first thing you have to do is rule out the usual suspects. Clinicians have to clear all the obvious culprits off the list before we can really dig into the heart of the problem.
And yeah, there's a whole checklist docs go through right away. They're going to look for any sign of infection, they'll check to see if the implant is loose, they'll look for tiny fractures, and they'll make sure the new parts aren't out of alignment. But in the cases we're talking about today, all of those have been ruled out. The obvious answers just aren't the right ones here.
So once all those big, obvious things are off the table, the medical world has, for decades, turned its focus to one main suspect, the patella, or as we all know it, the kneecap.
And this, my friends, has kicked off one of the biggest, most heated debates in all of orthopedic surgery. What should you do with the kneecap during a replacement? And is it really the thing causing all this pain?
The whole debate really centers on this one question. Do you resurface the back of the kneecap with a little plastic button, or do you leave it alone? And the research is all over the place. Some huge studies suggest that resurfacing helps cut down on pain, but then a whole bunch of other really high-quality studies find, well, no difference at all. The craziest part? In studies where people had both knees replaced, one with the button, one without, they often couldn't even tell you which was which. But here's the real kicker. This is the clue that tells us something else is going on. Even in the groups that got the supposed fix, the ones who had their kneecap resurfaced, the rate of pain was still over 11%. So even if it helps a little, it is clearly not the magic bullet everyone was hoping for. The plot thickens.
So, the search continued, still zeroed in on the kneecap. People tried other things like denervation, which is a fancy way of saying they cut the tiny nerves around the patella. But again, the evidence was totally contradictory. Another theory was overstuffing, the idea that the new implant parts are too thick and make things too tight. But nope, studies couldn't find a clear link to pain there either. It seems the more we stare at the kneecap, the less it makes sense.
And all of this confusion leads to this really powerful quote from the source material. It's basically the investigators saying, hey, wait a minute. Maybe we've been chasing the wrong guy this whole time. What if the patella isn't the main culprit after all?
So it's time to zoom out. We've got to expand the crime scene. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting, because we're going to start looking for answers not just in the knee, but way beyond it.
Let's just reframe this whole thing for a second. What if the knee is innocent? What if it's not the problem at all, but just the victim? The place where the crime happens, but not where the criminals are hiding. What if there's a conspiracy going on somewhere else in the body? And this is where we have to talk about something called the kinematic chain. It sounds complicated, but I promise it's not. Just think of your body as a big, interconnected machine. Your core, your hips, your knees, your ankles, they're all links in a chain. And if one link is weak or wobbly, let's say your hips, then another link down the line, like your knee, has to pick up the slack and take on way more stress than it was ever designed for. So here's how that domino effect actually plays out in your body. It might start with a weak core. That leads to unstable hips and weak glutes. When your hips are unstable, your whole leg alignment gets thrown off every time you take a step. And where does all that wonky, abnormal force end up? Boom! It gets dumped right onto the knee joint. So the pain is in the knee, but the problem started way up in your core. Now, that doesn't mean we completely let the knee off the hook. While we're looking outside the joint, we also need to look deeper inside it, at things that don't show up on an x-ray. The research points to all these soft tissues that often get ignored. like the little fat pad right under your kneecap. It's packed with nerves. If that gets scarred up or some of the tiny surrounding muscles get irritated, that could absolutely be a source of major pain.
Okay, we've gathered all the clues. We've interviewed the suspects, the patella, the hips, the soft tissues. I think it's time to bring it all together and finally solve this thing.
And the verdict is? There is no single culprit. This isn't a classic mystery with one bad guy at the end. The truth about anterior knee pain after a successful surgery is that it's a multifactorial problem. It's not one thing. It's a conspiracy.
So let's line up the members of this conspiracy, shall we? You've got your biomechanics, that weak core and those sleepy glutes. You've got angry soft tissues inside the knee itself. You might have subtle surgical factors or just your own unique anatomy playing a role. And yeah, the patella, it can definitely be a contributor, but it is almost never the whole story.
And this is the big takeaway. This is why this whole investigation matters so much. Because if the problem is a conspiracy, then the solution has to be a team effort. You can't fix this by just staring at an x-ray of a knee. You need a holistic approach. You need physical therapy that strengthens the entire kinematic chain, the hips, the core. You need a careful look at the soft tissues. You need a plan that's about the whole person, not just one joint.
So that leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. Maybe the real key to solving one of the biggest frustrations in knee surgery isn't about some fancy new implant. Maybe it's about changing our point of view. To finally fix the painful knee, maybe we need to stop looking so hard at it and start looking beyond it.